This summer, Simon Moro, Terry Hart, Knobs, an audio production podcast. Remember to like and subscribe.
So you had the idea for today. What are we talking about today?
Vocals.
Great.
Getting vocals to cut through in a mix, making them big, making them work, you know.
All sorts of vocal things. And reverb. So that was reverb, for anyone that's never heard reverb.
Yep.
Look, there are so many different ways that we can approach vocals, and I think to take something from this podcast, from this episode of the podcast, it's that there are so many different solutions and approaches to things that will all get to some kind of result, and context is always key. So we might improvise some signal chains and ways that we might approach a particular problem that might work in a particular way on a particular day. So this is really about mindset and, again, demonstrating why an understanding of the fundamentals is important.
Yep. Yeah.
I was thinking that we could start by sharing our vocal chains, but then I thought, let's do that later on because it's quite convoluted for someone that's maybe a beginner at audio.
Yeah, sure.
So maybe let's start with something simple. Let's start with...
We could work our way through the production.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's start with the voice.
Great.
Doesn't matter how good you are at mixing, you got to capture the right thing. Make sure you can work your vocalist. I wonder if that's a whole other episode, actually.
It might be. It could be. I mean,
do we stay with the technical here, or do we?
I like that we just go off on tangents. Let's just do what we do. Let's start with the vocal, the tracking of the vocal, because it informs all the other stuff we have to do.
It really does, yeah. You kind of building off that foundation, doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah.
You need a healthy singer, don't you? You need their voice. Yep. They need to be warmed up.
Yep.
You need the right microphone, right mic placement.
Yep.
Definitely helps if there's a little bit of grit to it. So the big problem with vocals is you're throwing it into a production with drums that have been crunched with compressors or had saturation put on them. You put them up against heavy guitars sometimes or screaming synths. It's not really fair for us to try to meet that with our voice.
Yeah. So
you need, from the very beginning, you should be trying to get a little bit of grain, grit and weight to it so that it can keep up with everything else. So that's why we love these old vintage microphones. That's why we like vintage preamps. Clean is just not your friend in those situations. So smaller diaphragm condensers are more honest. We always go for larger diaphragm condensers because they color the voice more, add more harmonic content, and of course making sure their voice is doing the right thing. It's very specific where a voice blooms in a microphone.
Yeah.
Making sure they know where it is. Sometimes we put up dummy mics for people if they're coming off and on the microphone a bit, so they can just sit there with an SM57 that's not even plugged in, but they'll be right in the spot.
Yep.
Making sure that they're really warmed up and then they're breathing. I've always had a lot of issue with singers that are coming in. They don't know why. They don't have the range. They can't hold the notes, and it's just the breath. They haven't engaged their diaphragm all day. They've woken up and they're shallow breathing. Probably only using 40 to 50% of their lung capacity. So getting them to make sure that they've fully engaged that. Like a trick I like to use is have them lie on the floor with a bunch of books on their tummy and breathe and make those books go up and down as much as you can, which you can't do without engaging your diaphragm.
Yeah.
Do that for 10 minutes and they'll get back up and suddenly they feel like they can hold a note for days. But all those little details are going to give you a foot in the door before you even touch a first compressor.
Yeah. There's so many threads I want to pull on there.
Yeah, I feel like that's almost its own thing, but
let's do it.
I tried to condense.
This is good. So Well, let's talk about how we get the voice to compete against these huge instruments.
Yeah.
And I think, which you were talking about, actually starting with the voice. So if we go that layer before the equipment, if I think about let's say two things that I think are quite common, and it all stems from the fact that most vocalists that you're going to work with are not the best singers in the world. They're enthusiastic, expressive, talented artists.
Well, put it this way: if they are the best singers in the world, we don't have to do anything.
Correct.
Make a cup of tea, set up the mic, and call
exactly.
it a day. Yeah.
So these two things I want to talk about. One of them is if the voice lacks resonance because they don't know how to engage the diaphragm, they don't know how to place the voice, that vocal is going to sound thin. That vocal is going to be harder to cut through the mix. And if they're inconsistent with their dynamics controls, you are going to be using clip gain and fader automation and parallel compression just to get that vocal to sit on top.
Which is not a fix. It really is a Band-Aid.
Yeah. And it really starts with the vocalist's ability to sing and that resonance. So I'll often get vocalists in with vocal coaches in the couple of months leading up to vocal recording to try and address that. And it's not going to be a miracle cure because we're talking about just a couple of months of training. But when the resonance is right and the dynamics control of the vocalist is right, we barely have to move that fader.
Yeah.
The other thing you talked about is the microphone and the singer's ability to use it properly and the placement. And if you have a vocalist that's a foot away from the microphone, they're never going to sound close.
No.
They're going to sound thinner. They're going to sound more natural. But if you want that larger than life big vocal, you want to be a couple of inches off the diaphragm.
Yeah. Unless you're literally belt in.
Correct. Yeah. And maybe just turn a bit off axis. The other thing that I wanted to call out with the resonance thing, because I think that resonance thing is a big problem. Like when you find yourself having to automate a lot on the vocal, it's an indicator that the singer just does not have good resonance, doesn't have good breath control. The other thing that I've noticed sometimes is when, and again, I actually think this is fundamentally a resonance issue, is an imbalance with consonants. I remember one singer played in my brother's punk band. And it was all consonants. Like just attacked it like if you're rapping, fine, because in rap the vocal is a percussive
pretty
instrument.
much. Yeah.
But when you're,
it's also not pitched.
Correct. Yeah. So it's this sibilance and brittleness that comes out through a lack of resonance, and it's because they don't know the mouth shape. Like changing the mouth shape improves the resonance. Placing the voice, controlling the diaphragm, the breath. Because what is singing? Singing is controlled relaxation of the diaphragm.
Yeah.
Because we contract to breathe in, but the singing part is actually controlled relaxation of that muscle.
Very, very slowly as well. Because if you do have a full breath in, I mean, another exercise that I do with singers is breathing in and then snatching breaths. If you just breathe in, you still got room. You can keep going. And the same with breathing out. And if they learn the full extent of their lung capacity, there's so much they can do. But it's right. It's a constant deflating of the lungs with constant pressure to excite the vocal cords. And it's a very slow thing. You've got to be able to, because it'll start off, you'll have a lot of pressure. Yeah. You'll lose it as you go. So you've got to hold back when you begin, push a little harder when you start to get to the end of it. But if you can exhale with a perfect amount of pressure the whole way through your lung capacity, well, you're already halfway there.
Yeah. And if you want a tangible example of this in action, find a plastic bag, blow the plastic bag up and press on it and start to deflate it. Then release the pressure and then hit it again. And you'll find that when you sort of press into a deflated bag, when you're singing and you get that jump, that little bump, that's re-engaging the pressure.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah, so you'll feel it. But if you just squeeze that bag constantly till it's empty, there's no jump in the note.
Yeah. It sounds very complicated, but in reality, you can't sing more than 5 tones. There's only 5 vowels, and you don't sing consonants. Don't have a note to them. So all you got to do is learn the face shape and the pressure requirements for those 5 vowels, and you're done.
Yeah.
But that's also a lifetime of work to get that right, isn't it?
But important to recognize that if that part is wrong or if that part is lacking, then a big part of what happens next, including microphone placement, including preamp choice, including EQ and compression, is already acting as a compensation tool.
Yeah.
And you need to know the limits of where you can take it.
We're supposed to be making you sound cooler, not make you sound cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, I'll backpedal for 1 second because you were talking about resonance, and it reminded me of a story. I did an album years ago for the 10 Tenors. I basically had one mic set up, and they were going in doing their takes as they went through. And one guy stepped up to the mic, and he was the bassist. Can't remember his name now. I think it might have been Henry. But he stepped up, and I wasn't watching the meters, and he started to sing. I thought, oh, hell, this guy's loud. He's just blown out the microphone. So I stopped him, and I went back to have a look at the levels. Well, he was half the level of everybody else, but it sounded twice as loud.
Yep.
That's good resonance.
That's good resonance.
It was insane, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that is ultimately what we try and do in sound. We want the greatest illusion of loudness with the least amount of actual energy.
Yeah, and he just did it like naturally, which and you would have come across those singers in your career where you're cranking everything and it's just not there.
Yep.
But that's a very hard thing to compensate for. It's doable, but that shouldn't be the game.
Yeah, and look, obviously the tone of the voice is also the shape of the head.
Yeah.
Your teeth, all of that comes into play. But yeah, I think
how tight the jeans are, the whole thing.
Well, that's certainly for the range.
Yeah.
So I think it's just an important thing to be aware of, that you can start improving the vocal sound before you even choose the microphone. So, yeah. Microphone choice obviously is important. Do we want to jump past the tracking and any other sort of tracking ideas, or we want to jump into?
Well, I think let's stay true to the brief and move on, because again that's a whole podcast in itself, isn't it? Yeah. So mixing.
Yeah.
Or should we just stop by the avenue of comping and editing vocals?
I'm happy for you to take the lead on this one.
Well, if you get a good singer, you don't have to comp or edit them. Now, moving on to production.
That is true. That is true. Any particular thoughts on the comping part as it pertains to helping the vocals cut through in a mix?
Yeah, well, I like to keep in mind max level. Obviously, you're looking for a very emotive performance, the simple things, right notes, right rhythm. But when it comes to cut through, you can definitely hear fatigue if they've done 15 takes towards the end. And that can be really, really useful. Or that can be a very that can add a lot to the narrative if you choose one word for them to sound slightly fatigued on, or one word from the start of the take when they were singing a bit too loud because their headphones were too low. Like there's those little bits from the outside, but generally you'll find a bunch of comps, or takes somewhere near the middle of the group where the energy is more or less matched. It doesn't matter if it's high or it's low, but it's matched, and that's just going to make you, it's going to sit in the mix nicer the whole way through, and do most of your heavy lift in there if you can.
Yeah.
And generally when I comp, I feel like I map through, I don't know about you, but if I've got to a word in a phrase and suddenly it's out of tune, well, I try not to choose a word from either end. I try to maybe move one or two takes in either direction, earlier or later in the day, just so they are hitting that energy, unless I'm making some sort of creative choice.
Yeah. For me, similar to you, I tend to find there are a few takes in a row where it's going to be the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Quick tangent. I use regression to the mean as an indicator of when we're done.
Yeah.
So what I'm looking for is 3 or 4 above average takes, and then we're as good as we're getting.
Yeah.
Like we could do 1,000 more takes, we're not getting any better.
Yeah.
So I look for those 4 takes above average, and they're going to be those ones that I do the main comp from, and then there'll be those other takes around that where there might have been some something that they just did that was magical. It might have been an out-breath after a word that was really expressive. Might be that fatigued take.
A vocal lick that they didn't do or anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Similarly, I find that...
Although a nice thing to do with this take process is something that you could basically not do live is when you do start, you have a bit more energy. Later on, you don't. You can bring the verses down to a certain level, like maybe choose some more breathy takes when they were closer on the microphone, and then a different take for the chorus, and actually separate the song out that way from the tonality of the voice, which can be fun.
Yep. Yeah. So lots of different things. I think, it's so easy to think that getting a vocal to cut through a mix is all about compression and EQ choice at the mix stage. Like, so much is based on what the raw ingredients are.
Are people going to be really upset that we're this far into this podcast? We haven't talked about a single compressor setting or anything.
Well, I hope they understand that we're about to.
We're about to.
Okay, let's start. Happy to start with the mixy bit.
Yeah, let's get into the fun.
All right, so I'm gonna start with my early vocal chain, and spoiler alert, it's completely wrong and it's completely lazy and it's completely lacking an understanding of what you need to do with a vocal. But this is where most people start.
Yeah.
So my vocal chain was some kind of channel strip. I'd have a high pass filter, 4-band EQ, and compression, and a reverb and a delay.
Yeah.
And that was about it. And I did, starting on an analog console and then moving to a DAW. Maybe I might have stacked a couple of EQs because there was some resonance I had to try and fix.
Yep.
I might have had an extra compressor because I wanted some extra tone, but I didn't really go beyond a single channel for the lead vocal and one reverb and maybe a delay.
You drunk.
I know. I know. So that's where I started. Where did you start?
I think it's pretty similar. I mean, you go back, again, you mentioned a console. When you're on smaller setups, you just don't have the spare channels. When we moved into early Pro Tools and TDM systems, it was a similar problem. Like you couldn't just open up 50 other channels and put whatever you want on them. The system would crash. So that forced you to sort of make allowances and do things a bit differently than you would. I mean, in the early days on analog consoles, you just, consoles aside, you just wouldn't have that many EQs to plug in. Reverbs to plug in. So it would be shared with a bunch of other things. Yeah. And you got stuck in that headspace, I think. I mean, I know I did for a long time.
Yeah.
But then it's a slow process, isn't it? We both have mixed templates, as I'm sure a lot of people do, and you come up with an idea and I like that, and then another and another and another, and before long you're looking at 30, 40, 50 channels there. Not necessarily to be used every time, but lots of options for what can be done.
Yeah. And I think this is one of the challenges is I didn't know that you could do anything more than that. And I had a conversation with a colleague, Christian Scallon, and what he said to me was, the vocal's the most important thing in the song. We know that. He said, well, why are you spending 80% of the time on the drum sound?
On the kick drum,
and 5% of the time on the vocal.
Yeah.
So it should be the other way around.
Yeah.
And that was just so succinctly put, like, okay, yeah, you're right. So then the next question was, how? And just one of the tips he gave me that I still use today, he said, rather than have one big long reverb, have two. Have a short ambient reverb and have a long reverb. And just by doing that, you can have the ambient shorter reverb louder in the mix, so it still creates space around the vocal.
Which is what I use it for. Like you want it to be 3D.
Correct.
Like you want it just to be wide.
Correct. So you've got
space
around it.
Yeah.
And then the longer decay reverb, you can have lower in the mix. So that way you still have the illusion of this big grand reverb, but it's not taking up the same amount of space as if you had just the long reverb up 10 dB more.
Yeah, and there's things you do with long reverbs. You don't really want the S's to blow out or things
Yeah.
like that. But if that was your only reverb,
Correct.
well, the S's would sound like they're right in front of your face, and the rest of the vocal would sound like, it'd be very disconnected. So
Exactly.
yeah,
So then my post that conversation chain expanded to, I had my main channel strip, and I think I was using hardware insert. I think the AMEC channel in a box is my main channel strip.
nice.
Maybe some plug-in saturation and whatnot, and then I had a slap echo that I kind of would have left and right, sort of 65 milliseconds, 75 the other, just enough to scatter it and give a little bit of excitement.
Yeah.
So I have that slap echo, short reverb.
On all the time or off and on?
Depending on the section.
Because I think that's we're all guilty of that when we start mixing, where we find it and just leave it. Whereas automating things off and on came down the line a bit, didn't it? Yeah.
But yeah, so to automate, yes. Short reverb, long reverb. Then I sort of had some weird effect that might be, I think I was using an Eventide multispectral delay.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like this weird kind of thing that I could make some moments out of.
Yep.
And then just a ping pong long sort of echo repeater. And a parallel slam, like L1 in parallel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And something
that was an
like,
early thing that just made such a difference, didn't it?
Yeah.
Just to give it body.
well, that can compensate
through.
for that lack of resonance, and then I'm suddenly moving that
Or the
fader
larger,
less.
the dynamic range, just sort of ties it in really, really well. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the next evolution. I went from one channel and a reverb and a delay to parallel limiting, short, long reverb, slap echo, spot echo, and maybe some other like feature effect for the song.
Yeah. But again, that I mean, you probably grew into that, but you also it was part of the times. Like you put an L1 on. There wasn't that long ago where delay compensation wasn't that good, and
That's true.
there'd be smearing and things.
That's true.
So you just wouldn't do it. A reverb and delay, that's fine, but it's a reasonably recent thing that you can just throw plugins anywhere and everything's phase accurate.
Yeah.
And even today, there's the occasional thing which doesn't quite work.
Yeah. Well, as we were messing with my new mix template, with my more recent vocal chain, that's quite complex because it's it's hybrid. There's many hardware inserts, many hardware effects, many parallel digital processors, and we're having issues getting the phase alignment. Which we ended up using Waves in phase. Actually, which was actually great just to lock it down, get everything all aligned. But yeah, where did you evolve from that first sort of I don't know what else I can do, and what was your next step?
Well, I started mixing at home. I mean, it would have been like I started with an M box, then I got a Digi 002, and all of my mixes were in the computer then. They were relatively simple. When I started to move into mixing on a bigger console, that's when I just I developed a bunch of reverbs that I liked and effects and slam compressors and things like that, but they were always accessible. And when you have knobs there, I just got in the habit of just sending things to them. But when I started, there wasn't very much automation. Like it wasn't off and on; it was just there all the time. I then came back to a smaller analog console for my home mixing setup, and that was a little bit limited in what I could do. Like I just didn't have a lot of Q sends that were spare, so I ended up back in the computer. And that's where it really started to grow that second time. I've been exposed to that idea on the console. I was like, okay, you can have all that stuff, but this can be tailored to the vocal. I can have a reverb tailored to make that chorus big or tailored to make that verse intimate. And it just became habit. I mean, I'd started on the console to just, while I was mixing the song down, turn off reverbs or turn them on for verse or chorus and just make broad sweep things like that as it was going down, because you're sitting there, you're not bouncing, at 10 times speed, offline bounce or anything like that. So every time you play it through, well, you get antsy and you'll do things with your hands.
Yeah.
And so I'd got I'd started to develop that idea that obviously you can change things and should change things. But obviously another big eye opener was the Brauer thing, and then it was that really let the dog off the leash, didn't it?
100%.
More channels.
Yep.
Yeah, and moving them around and making it as interesting as possible. And I think that was a particular phrase that really resonated with me when I think it was David Kahn that said it, that the ear craves distraction. Was that him?
Gosh, I can't remember.
I'm pretty sure it was. And that really struck a chord with me because it just seems so obvious. There's a lot that I'm doing in the mix, and I was doing it because I liked it, but then I didn't know the drive for why I liked it. And it was like, that was so simple. The ear craves distraction. Just give it something new to listen to every bar if you can, every 2 beats if you can. Like, even if it's subtle as hell, it will just keep you locked into the song, keep you locked into the message.
Which I suppose it kind of makes sense, because it will force your brain to be alert in the lizard brain part of the brain, because if as soon as something becomes hyper predictable, the brain goes, it's safe, I can shut down.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Whereas if you're constantly changing things, the brain has to be alert because it's making sure you're safe.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's also fun.
Yeah.
Move things around. Like you would again, we would have both back in the day, we just put a delay on, and that works on average across the song. But it becomes really interesting if you set up, I mean, I know your mixing template's similar to mine in that you might have 5 or so delays set up from short to long, and having them all there, and some of them are ping pong, some of them are just stereo, some of them are mono, whatever. But to be going through your song and trying out on different words or phrases all those delays, and one is definitely awesome, and the rest of them are like, it's a delay. Yeah. But when you get into that detail, it just every single word, every single phrase becomes cooler. Yeah,
definitely. And an important thing there is the fact that they're already set up, ready to go.
Yeah.
And it allows you to be spontaneous. It allows you to react and respond to the music, because the second you hit stop to make an aux track, put a plug-in on it,
you've lost that flow state.
Yeah, and then you've also lost the ability to compare one to the other, or you have to then start again. So obviously,
and sometimes it's better to start with something.
Yeah,
it might not be right. Like, you can have them locked in on doors now. You don't have to go and dial them in. You can just have it set to a quarter note, 8th note, 16th note. And whether it's one sound or another, or how you've EQ'd it, or whether it's a ping pong or whatever, it doesn't matter. You go. But then when you find the phrase that particular thing's working on, we're like, oh, no, that needs to be what, just having a starting point, the next decision you'll make is like, this will improve it.
Yeah.
As opposed to just sitting there and like, I'm going to do a delay, and then you start pulling up settings. It's just too quick to lose objectivity. But if you're just working with something, you'll know that something's better than something else. Yeah.
Exactly, because we're great at comparisons, but it's very difficult. Our brains don't work with absolutes.
Yeah.
I guess before we move on to some problem solving mix stuff, did you want to share, because as you said, we might have slightly different settings, but pretty much the same kind of vocal setup based on Brauer's approach, where we're blending compressors together. Yeah. And a big part of that is that by choosing a blend of compressors on 4 separate faders, which you can move very, very easily, you almost get this instantaneous access to tone, brightness, darkness, and saturation and character, softer, harsher.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a way that you just can't do one plugin at a time. So it's about the speed and the character, so we do that with the blending 4 compressors. I also use a parallel limiter, like digital limiter, to bring up the vocal.
Yeah, me too.
I feel like I know that I use all 10 sends on my vocal channels. I think the first 5 are in the box plugins, like a digital, like an in-the-box short verb, in-the-box long verb, slap echo, the spot echo, and I feel like I can't remember what the fifth one is, but I know that it's in the box. It's a lush. I call it lush verb.
Yeah.
It's usually something like Valhalla shimmer or eventide shimmer verb.
Yeah, okay.
So they're my 5. And then the next 5 are my hardware processors, which is usually like the Lexicon PCM 96, the EMT 140,
Yep.
a spring reverb,
Yeah.
an Alicia character that I use as a distortion. And then the last one will change more frequently, but it could be tape echo, it could be the Publis and Fullmost that sort of is a high frequency blend.
Yep.
That I sort of do in parallel. I think the Joe Meek channel strip that had the enhance button, a similar thing.
Yeah, okay.
Which I don't use that often, but I used to be like a secret for me, like just this pop sheen.
It's funny how you grow in and out of things, isn't it? So,
yeah. I just sort of found more convenient ways to get the same result.
Yeah. Yeah.
There
was probably a time when you needed top end, so enhancers. And I was definitely there, was the Aphex enhancer or you couldn't mix a vocal without it, but I wasn't good at getting top end.
Yeah.
And that was both from the recording stage and the mixing stage. So yeah.
So I would encourage everyone to think about experimenting with the lead vocal more.
Yeah.
With parallel and inserts.
You can't do too much.
You can't do too much. And once you figure it out, your songs will sound so much better.
They do. And then I mean, you do hear a lot of amateur mixers. There's always this issue of too much reverb and too much delay.
Yeah.
And I think that's all just leaning into what we're talking about here, is that if you have one reverb across the whole thing, well, you'll get used to it and keep turning it up and keep turning it up and keep turning it up. The nice thing about this is if you have a heap of different effects, is that because they're fresh each time, you can bury them so deep, but they'll still do what they need to do, make it more interesting. And I like to even push a bit further. I don't know about you, but these delays, every single one of them I have on a send to the reverbs.
Yeah.
So they're not automatically up,
but
I'll check it like, does that sound good in my room or my ambience or my plate or anything like that? Because sometimes those huge, like long quarter note delays on one word, they're going to sound a bit full on if they're just, raw.
Just dry, yeah.
But that makes, before you've even touched a setting, how many different options you have on faders to be able to make a unique sound that it's the same mix template every time, but none of the songs will ever be the same because nothing ends up
exactly
in the same spot. Yeah.
I just have deactivated reverbs at the end of my delay chains.
Yeah.
So but it's probably better to have it on send because then
see, this is my brain broken because I'm still thinking about the analog console. Like, no, I've only got those 4 delays.
But I mean, because my brain is thinking, do I want that delay pushed to the back of the stage, or I'm happy to have it forward?
Exactly.
So I kind of only need like push it back, but my solution, unless I go into the mix blend, which I usually sort of set in my template already, so it's not 100% wet, it's probably 50% or something. Whereas your version of it is actually kind of cleaner. Obviously, you can't get 100% wet, but if you wanted, I mean,
if I wanted to do that,
then you just insert.
Yeah.
But I like I like the idea of having it on ascend because then, as you said, it's sort of almost there. Like
just throw faders up and down and see what works. And it's just in my head, it's having it so. If I have a chorus vocal and in that chorus is a huge plate reverb, well, do I want the delay to sound separate to that ambience, or do I want it to be part of it? And I mean, not a right or wrong answer, but sometimes I definitely want it to be in with the rest of it so that that's all sounding like that in the hall or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's the thinking anyway.
Nice. So be more experimentational and go further. Let's talk about, I guess, the big question. How do you get the vocals to cut through the mix? And this is not going to have the same answer every time.
No.
So let's throw out some scenarios. Let's throw out some reasons and some solutions So Terry, I've got this vocal and it's not cutting through the mix. Maybe I'm the client and I'm telling you this.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we go from here?
Well, listening is going to be the start point. If I'm hearing similar to what I was talking about before, if I'm hearing a song with a lot of saturation, a lot of distortion, well, there's not really going to be a way that I can think of to put it in there non-destructively. Like you could sidechain the whole mix to the vocal if you wanted to. Mm-hmm. And this is more or less what was done. A lot of people are still mixing through C1 and C2 smart compressors, hitting them like Andy Wallace is slamming a C2. Oh, I think he's still doing it. He did for a while though. That's basically mono. So basically every time the vocal does anything, it turns down the whole stereo image. So aside from doing things like that are a bit more destructive, I'd be looking at what about the rest of the mix is not in the vocal. So yeah, if we're looking at a death metal song, well, everything's distorted. My head would be vocal needs to be more distorted. And we both talked about parallel limiters or a bit of distortion to give it a bit of weight. But in that sort of case, I'd be just distorting the vocal a bit, as much as it needs to go there. A great way to do that, I wouldn't quote me on this because this can break preamps, but there are some preamps, depending on the architecture of them, that you can just feed line level into. And that's an awesome distortion. It's does everything it needs to do without sounding like a fuzz box and keeps the clarity of it. There might be other cases where there's just most of the detail that we get in the vocals are going to be in the top end. So maybe don't touch the vocal. Maybe everything else is a bit bright. Maybe there's not enough weight in the vocal. Maybe there's too much bottom end in the mix for the vocal to be able to keep up. There's only so much you can crank, 200 cycles in a vocal before it just turns to nothing. Mudland, exactly. But yeah, I'd be listening to the mix, and it really does depend on what's happening there. But sitting there and being objective, listen to it, asking the question and answering it.
Yeah, exactly. So this comes back to what we've spoken about before. That is, a trick is only as good as the context it was created in.
Yeah.
And I would do exactly the same thing. I would start by trying to address the issue. So.
Or identifying the issue.
Yeah. Sorry, that's what I meant. I'm not thinking. Start by identifying the issue. And it might be this vocalist is lacking resonance. So then of the tools available, what can I do to improve the resonance? And the first thing I think of is, the balance of sibilance, and I want to bring up the body.
Yeah.
So I tape saturation, distortion.
Yeah.
What is distortion? Is extreme compression.
Yeah. And
compression is reducing the dynamic range. So when we've finished our compression, the end result is the quieter stuff is louder than it was.
Yeah.
Perceived louder. So that you might go a long way to fixing an absence of resonance by using extreme parallel compression or limiting.
Yeah.
Looking at a spectrum analyzer and seeing where the harmonic content of their voice sort of falls off. If they don't have any low frequencies in there, then it might be, as you mentioned, sort of boosting in those low mid ranges. So we use some of the tools to address that issue of resonance is problematic. How can we improve it? You could use something like Melodyne's dynamic control to bring up the quiet stuff. You could use Oxford Inflator to bring up the quiet stuff.
I've even gone to format shifting when there's been
format shifting, great.
Like issues there. A lot of people don't have any bottom end. I'm one of them. I don't have a lot of bottom end in my voice naturally, so I find if I've ever had to mix or had someone mix my stuff, I've always had to do something to get something a bit lower. Yeah. So identify that part, then move to the tools to fix it. Take that as far as you can, and then the next question is, well, in the context of the mix, what now is preventing that vocal from cutting through? Is it now that we've sort of improved the resonance enough and it's just every third word is disappearing, but otherwise it's great? Well, then it could be we just need to turn those few words up. Yeah.
It could be with clip gain, it could be with Melodyne, it could be with fader automation. I tried to do a lot of dynamics controls in the automatic space so that my fader rides are less. So I'll be using...
and they're more creative. You're not trying to fix things. You're trying to be...
Correct. Yeah. You're pushing up a breath that just has some motion in it.
Yeah.
Or the end of the word, there's a running out of air, but the expression is there and you want it heard. So kind of controlling... we just... If it's every few words, well... It might just be a simple volume automation in whichever is your flavor of correcting that, whatever part of the chain.
Yep.
Obviously, clip gain is going to turn it up for everything else. Like it means it'll hit the compressor at the same volume as the louder notes.
Yeah.
So that'll be one thing to do. But maybe you've evened it out and it's actually more than that. And it could be that there's a ton of congestion in the center of your mix.
Yeah.
So I would
get on those pan knobs, baby.
Yeah, and look, it's one of those things where it can be really great starting a mix with a vocal. Go to the chorus, hit solo on the vocal, and then start bringing in instruments.
Yeah.
And just find, like, if you only had 2 instruments, what would be the next one you'd pick?
Yeah.
If you only had 3, what would be the next one you'd pick? And add until the point it breaks. And the point it breaks, there's sort of an indicator that instrument
is the issue.
The issue. So then it's, well, do we just leave it out altogether? Or do we carve out the frequencies where the vocals are? And we could do that with a static EQ. We could do that with a dynamic EQ sidechain from the vocal. We could use something like track spacer that's designed to take whatever's in the sidechain and do the inverse equalization of that frequency from the program material.
Yeah.
So, or do we just pan it off to the side? Do we thin it out? Do we turn the volume down? So it sort of that's when the mixing dance begins.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's endless different solutions to that. I was just while you were speaking, then another one struck me that I do use in those situations where something's just not cutting through. Making it dynamic makes it so much it creates distraction. Like the craves distraction. So it's so parallel saturation, it can be a distortion plugin that's absolutely ripping it, or it can be subtle, or it can just be like the L1 or limiter or something like that. But something that's a parallel slam and have it sent pre-fade. So if you think about what's happening, if they sing and they're not loud enough, you're going to turn the fader up when you're doing your vocal rides. It's going to be louder, but not so in your face, not so bright with the distortion. If I have to turn it down, the clarity will be put back into it by the distortion, so it almost levels itself. Because if you just add distortion the whole time, when you turn something up, it's going to get pretty abrasive in the ear. This actually changes the tonality of it as you go. And I found that very useful in cases where I just can't get it to cut through.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, this is one of the things I love most about sound production and signal flow. Like we can just create all of these things that, like you wouldn't have thought that was a thing you would have done. Like back in when consoles were first
I did
invented,
it by accident first. Yeah, I didn't realize I didn't have the button in.
Because it's kind of like it means that you've got to make sure that the pre-fader send level is never at the wrong volume.
No,
or you've got to start automating that as well.
Yeah.
So your brain thinks, well, I can't do that. But no, actually you can.
Yeah.
And what's great about that is
how good is it for reverbs as well?
Yeah.
If they yell, you turn down the vocal, it gets bigger and wider because the reverb hasn't changed. Yeah. So it's a counterintuitive thing, or it's a rule, it's a broken rule. But what you get from that approach that you can't do post-fader without fader riding the distortion is that you've got this beautiful blend of I'm getting more clarity in the vocal, I'm getting a louder, clean vocal, and then the question is softer, dirtier one.
Yeah.
And every time you touch the vocal fader, the tonality of the vocals changes.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
There's not a plugin that does that. There's just so much going on there with one simple move, one simple button that you can flick on or off in your DAW.
Yeah. And another example from my mix template, I send to effects from the vocal channel and also from the slam channel. And the reason I do that is because otherwise, like this, it's just totally dry, or I need to crank the main channel. I need to crank the send so loud to get the effect above the parallel, because the parallel is very loud.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of these reverbs are designed, I mean, especially convolution rooms, but even other things, they're designed so that they kind of need a certain amount of energy to excite them.
Yeah.
And sometimes your vocal can fall below that. So if it's something that's given it stereo width, if they're just sort of soft on starting a word, it's not going to sound very, very narrow at the start. So that would fix that really nicely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just flagged that because if you were to sort of do that vocal and the parallel slam and do your sends from the dry vocal, then similar to your distortion trick, every time you move the vocal up or down, that non-slammed vocal, which is feeding the effects, is getting louder and softer, but that
slam isn't.
The slam isn't.
Okay. Yeah.
I link my sends, so if I turn it up on just the vocal channel, it turns it up the same amount on the parallel.
Yeah.
And the parallel is linked to the fader. So if I do a fader move up and down. So the way I sort of look at it, and I think for anyone that's struggling to understand the simple concept of pre and post fader, we think typically pre-fader is for monitoring because say this is the level for the drummer, this is the level for the vocalist, this is the level for the keyboard player. I don't want to change that. Like,
you might want to solo the kick drum and make sure there's not it hasn't fallen out of place, but that doesn't mean everybody else should have that.
So it's like, there's your mix, there's that person's mix, there's my mix.
Yeah.
They're independent, they don't interact. But post fader, we do want them to interact. And I think like for post fader, we use for effects typically. And if you think of it like this, you might, when you're designing your vocal sound, you've got your short reverb, 20%, or let's say 50%, your long reverb, 40%, your slap echo, 20%, your distortion, 80%. And that's on a post-fader send. And you've been meticulously balancing this and getting to the point where you say, that's it, that's my vocal sound.
Yeah.
Well, now when you turn the fader up and down, that vocal sound is maintained.
Yeah.
Whereas if you sent pre-fader, as soon as you touch that fader, that vocal sound that you agreed was the perfect sound is no longer there.
Yeah.
So
it is a trap.
Yeah, so typically...
I know I like to do stems at the end of a mix, especially when I'm running through a lot of analog. It's just, easy to recall that way. But sometimes I'm not been paying attention and realize that one of these vocal things have been through my kick drum. So, it is a trap. It's something you have to be careful with,
Yeah, so pre-fader for monitoring, post-fader for sends, because it keeps your vocal sound.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how I approach it, and I link my faders and my sends, because that's the sound that I want. And I do have another channel that I run in parallel that has a distortion on it that also feeds a very kind of full-on echo and full-on reverb. And I ride that. Like once I've done my vocal balance, I then run that in parallel to give me the point of difference in those moments.
Yeah. And they're great to have on faders because it's if they're there and they're sitting there, you can just move them up and down when you hear it, and that's it makes such a difference.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you think? Anything to add to vocals cutting through?
I mean, I think that's a pretty good overview. A pretty big brain dump, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we were to summarize.
How about one little counter?
Okay.
Because there's also the other side of the coin here. You ever have these issues where it's sort of a soft song and you can't get the vocals to get in the song?
Great. Yeah.
Because it's more or less what we said, but opposite a lot of the time. But it is an issue you can come across. Yeah.
It's a great question. And it's funny that I hadn't even thought about it, because what you and I have to do, our job is to make the vocal fit in the song.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I never actually named that as a problem, but I've come across it many times. And I think
since we've got nailed our vocal chains recently, we're both very happy with them. Yeah. But sometimes it's too much. I've definitely had that experience where it's just too big, too complicated. Same thing with the bus processing. It's like
take that compressor off. Now it sounds cheaper. That's what we want.
Yeah,
Sometimes
yeah.
like too glorious.
Yeah.
But if we think about, well, here's a really common example of, well, I think if I've interpreted the question correctly, I think this is a common example. When someone brings a backing track to you to sing a vocal over the top of, or
Making it sit in there is just a nightmare.
correct,
Yeah.
or if you've done everything with software synths, which are all just digital,
Yeah.
and now you've got a vocal,
Yeah.
and potentially your
absolutely.
vocal's been tracked in your bedroom, so there's some ambience, so you can't even get it to the front, and you've got this sonic imprint. So do we want to? Well, let's do that scenario. We've got a backing track and a vocal, and the vocal has glorious gyprock reverb.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
plasterboard bedroom vocal.
Well, I mean, assuming I have access to the stems in this scenario, I'd be looking at going back to the 80s, get some reverb that's cool, some room reverb, and drop the whole mix into it in varying amounts, but start to get them back into a space so that they blend together would be a first step for me.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sort of like it's actually not that complicated.
No,
Because like it's sort of explained in the question. Like the vocal doesn't feel like it's part of the mix.
Yeah.
Well, how do we make things feel like they're connected? And this is one of the reason why we like the multi-bus approach is that all the guitars going to one compressor, they are all moving together. If one guitar triggers the compressor to reduce the gain, all the guitars are suddenly moving together at exactly the same time.
Yeah.
They're all imprinted with the same tone. Our guitars feel connected.
Yeah.
A bus compressor, the snare triggers the compressor, everything moves. The vocal moves down, the kick drum moves down, the cymbals move down.
Yeah.
And it's gelling it together.
I think a lot of people don't think of it that way, that, but when you're just like, aside from the whole ABCD bus thing, if you've just got a bus compressor and the vocal does something loud, what it's doing is turning down the rest of the mix to make room. Because it doesn't just turn down the vocal. But once you start thinking about it that way, if your kick and snare is driving that bus compressor, understand that it's turning down everything else, which is a sound, might be what you want, but it might not be what you want as well.
Yeah. Quick tangent on compressors. Some people might not have understood what you meant before when you said the C1 and C2 were mono. You're talking about the side chain.
The side chain, yes.
So the side chain is where a split of the input goes, or an external input goes into the detector circuit of the compressor. So when that side chain input goes above the threshold, the compressor does its gain reduction. Now you can have a stereo compressor that has a discrete left and right and can maintain a stereo image. If the side chain sums to mono, everything in the center is going to be 6 dB louder.
Yeah, exactly.
So that vocal is, or that snare or that kick, is going to be triggering that.
The compressor's hearing it 6 dB louder. You won't, but the compressor hears it and acts on it as if it was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what we were talking about with, it being mono. The detector circuit is mono. It behaves differently to a stereo side chain.
And that's like most digital compressors are fine in that regard, but it's an amazingly common issue in analog compressors. It's very rare that you can have a compressor where, say, if you have a sine wave, like a signal tone in Pro Tools, and you just pan it from left to right, that needle goes down and doesn't move. You'll obviously see it sway a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, that's how your compressor's hearing it. But only the really carefully designed units have taken that into account. But again, it is a sound, and some of the best records ever made were made on units that were not that linear across that.
Yeah, and that's what's great about analog. The other thing I wanted to say, just because I heard somebody talk about this and I think they totally misinterpreted it, and it's with the sidechain filter. So the high-pass filter, it does not make the compressor multiband.
No.
All it's doing is taking the low frequencies out of that detector circuit. So, for example, the kick drum isn't going to force that compressor to do gain reduction and move the whole mix, it will only be things above that filter level.
Yes.
It is still a broadband compressor.
The compressor still acts on the whole thing.
So when that snare triggers the compressor, everything's coming down, including the bass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Circling back to what we were talking about before and getting things to fit together,
Mm-hmm.
all of those things, like movement together, reverbs, that's probably the simplest thing that does the moves at the greatest way forward.
It does. It's psychoacoustical then. If you've been careful in your mix and the biggest reverbs on the vocal, well, that's telling your ear, that's telling your lizard brain that it's the biggest thing in that room. Use those psychoacoustic things to your advantage.
Cool. Well, hopefully we've shared some ideas and concepts and tips that will help your vocal cut through.
Probably a lot, right?
Nice.
Reverb. Remember to like and subscribe.